Good, happy Thursday evening. Is Thursday, August 11, 2022. And welcome to this Thursday evening of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Let's get started right now. Good, happy Thursday evening. I'm Riley King, and thank you for joining us for this Thursday evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this Thursday evening, so let's get started right now. First up, DOJ moves to unseal Trump's search warrant. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
Bad rap. Tonight, the Department of Justice is asking a federal court to unseal the warrant that the FBI used to search the Florida home of former President Donald Trump. Agents were looking for classified documents that may have illegally been taken from the White House. We learned today that investigators first subpoenaed those records this spring. 15 boxes of presidential records were removed by federal authorities earlier this year and returned to the National Archives. Attorney General Merrick Garland said today a federal court found probable cause to justify the warrant and called on a judge to make those details now public. Garland, the nation's top law enforcement official, said that unusual disclosure would be appropriate because the former president is talking publicly about the search. We have a lot of news to get to tonight, and CBS's Robert Costa is here to start us off. Good evening to you, Robert.
Good evening, Margaret. It was an extraordinary moment. An attorney general who rarely goes before the cameras speaking out about the Justice Department's probe of a former president and an FBI search that has jolted the nation's political scene. Attorney General Merrick Garland took ownership of the decision to search former President Trump's Florida residence this week.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter.
He also announced that the Justice Department has asked a judge to unseal the search warrant, handed over to the former president's legal team earlier this week when federal agents arrived at Trump's home. And the Attorney General asserted it was Trump who publicized the search.
The department did not make any public statements on the day of the search. The former president publicly confirmed the search that evening, as is his right.
Garland's move to unseal the warrant punctuated a politically and legally charged week as supporters rallied behind the former president, who declared the FBI search part of a witch hunt against him. Left unsaid why exactly FBI agents were authorized to go in and which documents they took from the residence.
Since I became Attorney General, I have made clear that the Department of Justice will speak through its court filings and its work.
The search was part of an ongoing federal investigation into documents Trump took with him when he left the White House last year. CBS News has learned that former Trump advisors have been questioned in recent months about how the former president dealt with sensitive materials and classified national security documents during and after his presidency. CBS News confirmed today that this week's FBI search was preceded by a grand jury subpoena this spring, which led to a June meeting between investigators and Trump's lawyers to discuss exactly how documents were taken from the Trump White House.
And Robert Costa is here now. How has the former president's team responded?
Just minutes ago, the former president issued a statement saying he and his lawyers have been fully cooperating with the probe, but they have a deadline, 3 p.m. Friday, to oppose the Justice Department's decision to unseal this search warrant.
Questions still about what sensitive information may be in those documents.
Exactly right.
Robert, thank you.
If you want.
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. Suspect killed after trying to breach FBI field office. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
After Monday's search at Mar-a-Lago, anti-law enforcement rhetoric online is growing even louder. Today, an armed man in Ohio allegedly attempted to breach an FBI field office, leading to a shootout where the suspect was killed. Here's CBS's Jeff Pegues.
Police say the heavily armed gunman drove up to the FBI building in Cincinnati around 9:15 this morning with a nail gun and an AR-15 style rifle. When armed agents confronted him, he fled and led police on a high-speed chase down Interstate 71, which ended in a gun battle in a field near Wilmington, Ohio.
Gunfire was exchanged between officers on scene and the suspect.
The attack comes after the FBI's search in Mar-a-Lago prompted calls for civil war and violence on social media. Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell received this threat.
Swalwell's a worthless piece of...
We've never seen a moment like this before.
Jonathan Greenblatt tracks threats at the Anti-Defamation League.
As soon as the news broke about the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago, there was a tidal wave of anger and animus that came from radical supporters of President Trump and a wide range of extremists across the sort of MAGA movement.
With threats increasing, DOJ officials removed information about the judge who signed the Trump search warrant. Today, the Attorney General defended the agents and prosecutors. I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked. The men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated, patriotic public servants. Here in Washington, city officials have been monitoring for potential threats. In fact, across the country, law enforcement has been following threads online, and some of the chatter that they are seeing is similar to what they saw leading up to January 6th. Late today here at the FBI Director Christopher Wray released a statement saying that unfounded attacks against the FBI erode the rule of law. Margaret.
Jeff Pegues, I know you'll continue to track this story.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Gas prices fall below $4 for the first time since March. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
We do have some good news for drivers. AAA says the average price for a gallon of regular gas dipped below $4 for the first time in 5 months. Here's CBS's Errol Barnett.
Today, $3.99, it's good.
It is a rare glimmer of financial hope for those frustrated by fuel prices. What does it feel like to get at least this small bit of relief?
It felt good. You know, I got a little extra money.
The national average for gas dipping below $4 today, almost 2 months after hitting a record high. Relief stemming from an increase in global oil supply and decrease in fuel demand, helping to lower the rate of inflation. How encouraging is that news to you?
Well, it's great. The trend is good. The trend is your friend, but we are not out of the woods yet.
CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger warns the bigger economic picture remains perilous.
The problem that we see in almost every category is that you can look at a given month and say, phew, we're down from the peak. And yet when you look back a year, it's still stunning.
While lowering in the past month, compared to 2021, gas prices are up 44%, and airfare is 28% more expensive.
You're still paying more than you were, 2 or 3 years ago.
Average rent costs have jumped 14%. It's twice as high in places like Cincinnati, Seattle, Austin, and Nashville.
There are millions of Americans who will continue to be under pressure until we see that inflation rate come down.
And to Jill's point, a third of Americans are now spending their savings to cover all of these increased costs, according to one survey. And while the price of regular gas has come back down to earth recently, diesel, which is the lifeblood of transporting goods all across the country, is 54% more expensive, Margaret, than 1 year ago.
Errol Barnett, thank you.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. CDC relaxes COVID-19 guidelines. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
Well, on the pandemic front, today the CDC updated its COVID guidance to loosen a number of its health recommendations. CBS News chief medical correspondent Dr. John LaPook is here now with the details. Good evening to you, doctor. So what is the biggest change?
Margaret, the CDC is trying to consolidate and simplify its guidance and remind us the pandemic is not over and a lot more people still need to get boosted. One important change has to do with shortening mask wearing after being infected with COVID. You still need to isolate for 5 days, but instead of then having to wear a mask around others for 5 more days, you can do a home test on day 6 and day 8. If they're negative and you have no symptoms, or if symptoms are improving and you have no fever without fever-reducing medication, then you can stop wearing a mask around others.
And there are also some changes, I understand, about how someone who's exposed to COVID should behave.
Right, Margaret, I just confirmed this with the CDC a few minutes ago, that if you are exposed to somebody with COVID, you no longer have to quarantine whether you are vaccinated or not. However, you do need to wear a mask for 10 days around others and get tested at day 5 after exposure or sooner if you have symptoms. And Margaret, this should lessen disruption in schools and elsewhere.
Dr. John LaPook, thank you for breaking it down for us.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. USPS announces rate increase for holiday shipping. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
The U.S. Postal Service is increasing rates for holiday shipping beginning in October. First-class packages will get a surcharge between 30 cents and $5.85, depending on the weight and distance.
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. Europe faces heat wave, wildfires, and extreme drought. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
Oh, travel, how we've missed you.
Tonight, firefighters in southwestern France are battling raging wildfires fueled by one of Europe's worst droughts in centuries. It has been a brutal summer. Historic heat waves across Western Europe have killed thousands. CBS's Roxana Saberi has more from London.
In a region of France renowned for its wine, wildfires are raging. Over 1,000 firefighters are struggling to contain the blaze near Bordeaux that's forced thousands to flee their homes. Countrywide, roughly 220 square miles have gone up in flames so far this year, nearly 6 times the annual average. Blazes are also breaking out in Spain and Portugal, fanned by consecutive heat waves and little to no rainfall. With more than 60% of the European Union and the UK now under a drought alert or warning, reservoirs and rivers are receding. On Germany's Rhine River, a crucial commercial route, some ships have cut cargo to avoid running aground.
Here in England, the first 6 months of this year were the driest in nearly 5 decades. Coupled with the recent record high temperatures, that's left the ground at farms like this one parched. Mike Swerling has had to buy costly supplements and dip into winter feed because the grass his sheep normally graze on is too dry to eat.
This is the driest I've ever known the farm. People are going to have to realise soon that it takes stable weather for us to produce food, not just in the UK, but globally.
So this should be a wake-up call.
It should be a wake-up call, definitely.
Parts of England and Europe are expecting rain in the coming days, but scientists warn climate change is making droughts and heat waves more frequent and intense. Margaret?
Roxana Saberi in London, thank you.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. That does it for this evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Thank you for tuning in and watching, and have a great evening. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another broadcast. Good night and goodbye.